We're very proud to be here today, which on a day that we actually think marks a very important milestone in the organization, which is the launch of our new research initiative at Common Sense. For years, we have watched extraordinary work by colleagues in our field, investigating the most important kinds of media usage, impact of media and technology on kids' lives, and other research that informs all of our work, and I'm sure the work of many of the people who are here today. So we are very proud to launch this new research initiative and to collaborate with a very long-time friend and colleague of mine, Vicki Rideout, who we first started working together about 19 years ago on kids and media issues before Vicki went at Children Now, before Vicki went to the Kaiser Family Foundation, and long before we started Common Sense Media. So it's a very exciting day for us, and we believe that the foundation that many of the experts who you're going to hear from in a few minutes have laid, and also the work of the Kaiser Family Foundation, which Vicki directed for more than a decade, have laid a great foundation for this new research initiative at Common Sense. And the fundamental part for us is to try to examine the very basic stuff about how media and technology are shaping our kids' lives. And to us, the past few years have seen extraordinary change with enormous ramifications and implications for our kids. So my kids are ranging in ages 7 to 18, and their lives have just been transformed over the past 4 or 5 years by the digital media stuff that they've been surrounded by. And I'm sure that's true for every parent and educator in the audience as well. Today, we are going to announce the results of 0 to 8 children's media use in America, which is the most up-to-date snapshot of how young kids and families are using media and technology today. It actually builds upon the research that Vicki most recently did with the Kaiser Family Foundation back in 2006. But that was before the invention of the iPhone. That was when, I would say, that was when Mark Zuckerberg was still in diapers. So this has all changed so dramatically, and as you're about to hear from in a minute, the media in our kids' lives, and particularly in our young kids' lives, influences them in ways that we don't fully understand. One of my closest colleagues at Common Sense, one of the co-founders, Liz Burley, our editor-in-chief, who's not here today, likes to always say we're conducting the biggest experiment ever on our children in real time. And I think that's right. And I think that the research that Vicki's going to lay out today, and then we're going to have a truly distinguished group of panelists discuss, will inform all of us about what some of that means. Vicki's going to give you an overview of the research in a minute or so, and lay out what we think it says. But then we're going to invite panelists to really give their take on this, and hopefully have a chance for you all in the audience, since you guys represent some of the leading experts in the field, a chance to ruminate on this data and also think about what we're going to do about it. At the end of the day, at Common Sense, what we really care about is taking great information like this and turning it into positive solutions for kids. That's why we started Common Sense. That's why many of you do the work that you do in the field. And so anything we can do to build off the research that we hear today and change the world for kids is essentially what we're all here for. One other person I want to mention, in addition to Vicki, is the new Vice President of Research at Common Sense Media, Sita Pai, who's sitting over here, who is the Director of our Educational Programs and Research, and who worked very closely with Vicki and Liz Burley and some of my other colleagues in building the program, the research today, and building the new research program at Common Sense. She is also the person who's overseeing the development of our new educational ratings initiative at Common Sense Media. We're going to launch that in the first quarter of 2012, and that will build off some of the work that we're talking about here today. So, first and foremost, I want to thank you guys all for coming. I'm going to come back after Vicki finishes and introduce the panel and get the discussion going, but I'd really like to welcome my very good, longtime friend and colleague, Vicki Rideout, who's the reason that we're all here today. So Vicki, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good morning. It's really great to be here with you guys. Thanks everyone for coming. I want to start by thanking Jim Steyer and everyone at Common Sense Media. And I especially want to thank the incomparable Liz Burley, who championed the development of this new research program and really brought it to fruition. So thank you, Liz. And especially also my comrade in arms, Sita Pai, who has been just a joy to work with on this, formerly of Sesame Workshop, who, as Jim mentioned, is the new Managing Director of Research and Education for Common Sense. And of course, the whole production and communications team. Excuse me. But I really especially want to thank Jim and the board of directors of Common Sense Media for stepping up to the plate and creating this new research program on kids and media. It's really easy in this day and age to do a quick and easy survey or piece of research that will come up with whatever finding it is you really want to find, whether you're an advocacy group or a marketing company. And there's really only one problem with this type of research. It usually isn't actually accurate. And I believe that actually knowing and understanding the reality of what is happening with kids and media is really important. I mean, it's important for those concerned about children's health, whether it's the impact of media on obesity or on sleep or on brain development. It's important for educators who want to understand how to reach the most at-risk kids with educational content. And of course, it's important to parents who want to know how to navigate their way through this the incredible challenge of parenting in the modern media age. So it actually takes some guts to step up to the plate and put the kind of money on the line that's necessary to do reliable research that truly reflects as best as research can the reality of what's happening. It costs a lot more money, it takes a lot more time, and you never know exactly what you're going to find. So I'm delighted that they decided to do this. And now it's my pleasure to present to you the results of the first survey. So to start with the methodology. This is a survey of more than 1,300 parents of children ages 0 to 8 years old. It was conducted online through knowledge networks. Now the reason that some online surveys are problematic, there's a couple of reasons really. One is the type of sample that they use. A lot of them use what's called a convenience sample. And that's a methodology that unfortunately has been documented to provide consistently less reliable and often highly unreliable results. What's important about the knowledge network sample is that they use a probability sample, which has been found to achieve results with a reliability comparable to that of random digit dial telephone surveys. The knowledge network's participants are recruited through a combination of RDD telephone surveys, including cell phones, and more recently through even more rigorous address-based sampling. The other way that they're different from other online surveys is that instead of just excluding any families that don't have a computer or internet access, the Knowledge Networks panel, they provide those families with a netbook computer and dial-up internet access for the purpose of completing their surveys. So it's much more representative of that spectrum of the population. Okay, so now to the main findings. This slide shows the amount of time that children ages 0 to 8 spend in a typical day with each type of media, including not only screen media like TV and DVDs, video games and computers, but also music and reading. In this slide, we've grouped media use by the type of activity. So, for example, kids this age spend an average of 25 minutes a day playing media games, and that includes both video games and computer games. Later on, you'll see those data broken out by platform rather than by activity. I think both methods give us some interesting information that's useful for different purposes. And if you look in the report, you'll probably see any which way that you want to slice it. What you see here again is an average, which is across all kids in the 0 to 8-year-old age range. So that means it includes 3-month-olds as well as 8-year-olds. It also includes some kids who played video games for 2 hours in the day that we inquired about, and some kids who maybe didn't play at all. And again, later on we'll look at these data broken out by age and also just among the children who did engage with each activity. We also monitor the presence of media in children's homes, and we find, as always, television is nearly ubiquitous. 72% of children's homes have a computer. That's a rate that's held kind of steady, I think, for the last 5 years or so. About 2/3 have cable television and console video games. And now we're beginning to also see the newer mobile digital media devices showing up in families, including smartphones at 41%, video iPods or similar devices at 21%, and iPads or other tablet devices in the homes of 8% of children this age. With regard to media in children's bedrooms, 42% have a TV in their room, and far fewer have either video game players or computers there. The last general finding has to do with multitasking. We were really interested to see when all this media multitasking that kids do actually starts, at what age, and would we find any among this age group. It turns out if you look at kids in the 5 to 8-year-old age range, which is what this is here, the majority of them still either never media multitask or do so really only once in a while. But we did find that close to a quarter of them, 23% of them, are already using more than one medium at a time, at least some of the time that they're using media. So now to some of the other key findings. One of our key findings from this study is that there's frequent use of digital media even among the very young children. We saw earlier the percent of children in this age group who have access to one of these devices in their homes. And it's a total of about half of all kids who have at least one of these devices at home. This slide shows us how many children have used one of these devices for media consumption, and that includes playing games, reading books, watching videos, or using apps. And as you can see here, it's about 4 out of 10 2 to 4-year-olds, and more than half of 5 to 8-year-olds who have at one point or another used one of these new digital devices. And overall, that's 38% of all kids in the 0 to 8-year-old age range. The percent of kids who use computers is even higher, with half of all 2 to 4-year-olds having done so, and 9 out of 10 5 to 8-year-olds. Now in this slide, we present the time spent with screen media. And this is where we're presenting it by platform. So you can see how much time children spend, for example, in front of a computer or with a video game player, rather than grouping it by activity as we did in the earlier slide where we looked at gaming as a whole. So you can see here it's about a quarter of all screen media time is now on one of the digital media platforms. And you can also see, I mentioned before that these are averages among all children. So you can see, I'm going to just isolate here, on average, children ages 0 to 8 spend only about 5 minutes a day using one of these new digital media platforms like a cell phone, a video iPod, or an iPad type of a tablet device for media consumption. But another way to look at these data is to say, well, in a typical day, how many kids are using these media? It's 11%. And how much time are they spending with it? It's 43 minutes a day on average. So among those kids who do use these media, which is about 1 in 10 kids in this age group in a typical day, they are spending close to 3/4 of an hour with these devices. The next key finding is that the digital divide is alive and well, and it really is quite substantial. As you can see here, less than half of all children in the lower income groups have a computer at home, still. And less than half have high-speed internet access either, and that compares to more than 90% of children from the higher income families. And what we've covered in this report is a whole new dimension to the digital divide, something that we're calling the app gap. So as you can see here, there's a big difference in access to new media devices by income. Only about 1 in 4 lower income kids have access to a smartphone at home, for example, and just 2 in 100 have access to an iPad or other tablet device. So no matter how terrific a tablet device is as a platform for educational content, it's not going to do any good in helping lower income children who don't have access to it. So that's a part of the equation that we're going to have to figure out. Delving into the app gap a little bit further, you can see here that a lot of lower income parents don't even know what an app is. Not very many have ever downloaded any apps for their kids to use. And there's a significant gap between lower income and higher income children in terms of the percent who have ever used one of these newer digital devices. The next set of findings concerns use of media for educational content for kids, obviously related to what we were just talking about, the digital divide and the app gap. So first we looked at which types of educational content are children actually accessing and using today. And you can see that about 1 in 4 children say they, or parents of children say they often watch educational TV shows. And it's far fewer, less than 1 in 10, who often use educational games or software programs on the computer, or use educational games or apps on one of the newer digital devices, mobile devices. So educational television is still the dominant medium. Now, when you look at these statistics by income, the dominance of educational television is even more pronounced. In fact, as you can see in the top set of bars here, educational television is actually the only type of educational content that lower income children are actually more likely to use than higher income children. So, I mean, it's obviously not surprising given the disparity that we just saw in ownership of the newer devices, but I still think it's important to focus on. You can see in this next slide, ownership of television is nearly universal. I mean, it's almost all kids are growing up in a home with television. It doesn't matter what the income level is. But even when you get to cable television, you're already losing about half of the kids, of the lower income kids. So I think that if we're serious about reaching that particular population, broadcast television is still going to be absolutely vitally important. So this leads us to our next general conclusion, which is that television continues to dominate children's media use overall. And this is important because we all get swept up, justifiably so, with what is new and exciting and different. We're all really enamored of the potential of some of the newer media devices, but it is also really important to keep our eye on what kids are actually doing now, in terms of the importance not only of educational content that we've just been talking about, but also of creating really high-quality entertainment television shows for kids, paying attention to things like gender roles and ethnic roles and violence and diversity and so on, and all of those other content-related issues that are so important. So if you look at how 0 to 8-year-olds spend their screen media time, you can tell from this pie chart that television's dominance is still pretty clear. The other way TV continues to dominate is the fact that it's just left on in so many kids' homes, whether somebody's watching it or not. You can see here, it's a total of about 39% of parents who say they leave the TV on either most of the time or all of the time in their homes, even if nobody's watching it. 4 out of 10 kids are growing up in those homes. And these are what we call heavy TV households. And the kids in these heavy TV households spend almost an hour more watching TV each day than other kids do. And they're also, not surprisingly, about twice as likely to be media multitaskers than other kids are. Our next issue involves the very youngest children, media use among babies and toddlers who are under 2 years old. And this, of course, has been in the news a lot in the last week or so because of the American Academy of Pediatrics announcement. So, on average, infants and toddlers in the 0 to 1-year-old age range are spending about 53 minutes a day with television and DVDs, 40 minutes a day with music, and 23 minutes a day either reading or being read to in their case. Now again, this is the average among all children in this age range, so it includes kids who sat and watched TV for several hours and those who didn't watch TV at all. What we found, again, if you look at the kids who did use that medium, among the kids under 2, almost half in a typical day do watch television, and those kids spend just about 2 hours a day watching TV or DVDs. Finally, we looked at demographic differences in media use. And as other studies have done, we found substantial differences in media use among children from different demographic backgrounds. The most pronounced difference was by race and ethnicity, with Black children spending about an hour and a half more with media, including all types of media, music, print, and screen, than white kids do, and about an hour more than Hispanic youth. Looking at it by income, there is a less pronounced, but still a significant difference, with higher income children spending about 45 minutes less time with media overall than lower income children do. So that's all of the data that I'm going to present to you now. There's a lot more in the report, so I hope everybody will take it and plow through it and find what's useful and interesting to you. and feel free to ask us any questions that you have. Right now, we're going to delve into the findings with this wonderful panel, and also, I hope, with all of you, because since I'm moderating the panel, I'm going to make it interactive. So, okay, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jim to introduce the panel.